Location, the lab. Quentin only has 24 hours to sell his car. Is that even possible? He goes to Carvana.com.
What is this, a movie trailer?
He ignores the doubters, enters his license plate. Wow, that's a great offer. The car is sold, but will Carvana pick it up in time for...
They'll literally pick it up tomorrow morning. Done with the dramatics?
Car selling in record time.
Save your time. Go to Carvana.com and sell your car today. Pickup fees may apply.
Well, another nice day out there. Looks like it's going to be some nice temperatures, lots of sunshine, early spring day. So get out and enjoy it if you can possibly do so. And hey, if you're going to go out for a walk, bring us along in the headphones and tune in. Listen online, whatever. Just enjoy your day, but enjoy it with the show. Why not? We will be opening the phone lines between noon and 1 today because it is a Wednesday. That means Dr. John Gillis will be by for house calls. Between 11 and 12, taking your health-related questions and concerns. And I'd like to thank, of course, Vanessa Vandeness on the other side of the glass at the control boards, doing a fine job as always. The Green Party will no longer be participating in this week's federal leaders' debates. The Leaders' Debate Commission says it has rescinded its invitation to the party because the Greens intentionally reduced its number of candidates running in the federal election. The commission says the party no longer meets the intention of the participation criteria for either debate this week. The first one, which gets underway tonight at 6 o'clock Eastern Time. It was originally scheduled for 8 o'clock, but that was bumped because the Montreal Canadiens could punch their ticket to the playoffs tonight. So that really goes to show you kind of where priorities are, right? And I find it a bit strange, in all seriousness, the scheduling of this debate, the English debate in particular. The Thursday night of a long weekend, the Easter long weekend, 9 o'clock, I think it starts. I can't imagine that too many people would be all that interested in it. And also, you're gonna lose the news cycle the next day, generally because Friday people will be off; they'll be doing other things. Easter related, whatever. They won't be. It's not the same as if it were regular Friday. You get my point. So it's the timing is odd, but again, this hockey game seems to be more important than the leaders' debate in French. So interesting nonetheless. One of the questions that I will ask you is: will you be paying attention, or will you pay attention to either the French or English debates? Are you still undecided? For those of you out there who are undecided, I want to hear from you today. I want to find out why you're still undecided. What is it that you're waiting to hear, or what information have you not heard or are you looking for? And why has no leader inspired you yet or motivated you to support them? That is something that I'll ask you when we open the phone lines, as mentioned, between 11 and 12. And what is the ballot box question? What is the main ballot box question? Are you voting for a local candidate, or do you vote for the party leader? That is another question, because some people will vote for whomever is in the potential prime minister. They'll say, I'll vote for Polyev, or I'll vote for, but technically, if you're not in that riding, you're not voting for Pierre Polyev or Mark Carney or Jagmeet Singh or whomever the leader is. You're voting for the candidate, and you all know this, but psychologically speaking, do you consider your vote being cast? Do you consider the leader or the local candidate? And I would say in this election, probably more so than many others, people will be voting for the leader based on what's happening in the United States and the ballot box question, which I still think remains how to deal with Donald Trump in the years moving forward. So some things that you can talk about. This also, Halifax scores poorly in municipal fiscal accountability ranking. According to the C.D. Howe Institute, Halifax has received a D grade in a national ranking of fiscal accountability among Canadian municipalities. The report from the C.D. Howe Institute assess the timelines and clarity of city budgets, including whether municipalities conform to public sector accounting standards. Researchers say Halifax restated budget projections in its financial statements without explaining variances from its original budgeted plan. The city also approved its budget after the start of the fiscal year and did not provide sufficient evidence of compliance with public sector accounting standards. So that all sounds pretty bad to me. Just look, I'm far from an accountant or a compliance officer. But it doesn't sound very good. Does this concern you? Are you surprised? Unfortunately, sadly, I'm not surprised. Why is it consistently accepted and expected to have poor fiscal results within the public sector? Because this is ubiquitous within the public sector, regardless of whether it be municipal, provincial, or federal. And should council be empowered to do more? Because council will say, look, we aren't in control, or staff doesn't work for us. The CAO works for us, and that's it. And everybody else answers to the CAO. Well, look, I'm not sure if that's palatable to taxpayers out there who are looking for some entity to do something about this to better protect their finances in cash-strapped times. So these are some other things that you can talk about, as mentioned, when we open the phone lines between noon and 1. So lots to get to today. Thanks so much for tuning in and listening. We always very much appreciate it. All right, let's dive into our first segment. The advocates for the care of the elderly, Nova Scotia, are raising the alarm bell over concerns of the rate of antipsychotic overprescription by physicians in Nova Scotia's long-term care facilities have reached an alarming level, according to the ACE team. Joining us to talk about all this is Bonnie Sherman, ACE team retired nurse. Bonnie, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
Good morning.
And Gary MacLeod, chair of the Advocates for the Care of the Elderly of the ACE team. Gary, thanks for joining us as well.
Thank you, Todd, and good morning to you and your staff.
All right. So, Bonnie, let's start with you. What data do we have what data are you utilizing here?
Well, this is very interesting, Todd, because Healthcare Excellence Canada is a coalition of national healthcare organizations who have gotten together and exposed the research that they did going back to 2019 to 2023 to 2024. And the research was done from the Canadian Institute for Health Information, CIHI, and that includes Canadian Drug Agency, Institute for Safe Practices in Canada, Canadian Association for Long-Term Care. So this was a pan-national collaboration of experts that looked at the rate of overprescription of antipsychotics in long-term care across Canada, and they also compared it to what was happening provincially, and then dug in to the details of what was happening in each long-term care facility in Nova Scotia. And the results are alarming.
All right, tell us more about some of the results, and why are these overprescribed? What's the reason why?
Well, going to reasons. I mean, I think we all know that our long-term care facilities in Nova Scotia are understaffed. There's still an old way of thinking around how to manage challenging behaviors in residents who have dementia. And this has been an over-reliance on the overprescription of antipsychotics. And they are given to residents who don't already have a diagnosis of psychosis. And there's an over-reliance on the physicians to use that essentially as a chemical straitjacket to deal with challenging behaviors. And this goes against all recommendations from the Alzheimer's Society of Canada, Healthcare Excellence Canada. All of the experts in the field are saying, hey, we can't be doing this anymore. This is not okay. We cannot be keeping our residents in chemical straitjackets, which is basically another form of physical restraint.
Gary, what's your takeaway on all this? Obviously, you're concerned, I'm sure.
Oh, very concerned, Todd. Historically, the ACE team has always been concerned about overprescription of psychotic drugs and antipsychotics. But and oftentimes you'll go into a nursing home and you'll see people slumped over in chairs, and we want nursing homes to have a quality of life where they're not always, sedated or in any way whatsoever. And even to the point of going into a nursing home. My mother, for example, was very ambulatory. She could walk anywhere, but the first thing they wanted to do was put her in a wheelchair. Mm-hmm. And the reason for all of this is that, and as Bonnie has alluded to at the beginning, was that because they're short-staffed, it reduces falls. There's all kinds of reasons why they do these things, but understaffing is a big concern and still is today. So, but we want people to have a quality of life so that they can live quite normally, as they would be in their own home.
Bonnie, I would think that there's obviously some role and some place for these types of drugs, though, right? We don't want to completely stigmatize or eliminate them. What's your comment on that?
Okay, well, that's the highlight of this study was that there is a role for antipsychotics in residents who do have a diagnosis of psychoses. Mm-hmm. But in a large part, what this study revealed was that 70% of residents, or 70% of long-term care facilities, were overprescribing antipsychotics to residents who did not have a psychosis. And so that is what we're calling attention to. So just while we're talking about it, what I would like to highlight are the data themselves. And just to give you context, when you look at acceptable rates of prescription of antipsychotics, comparatively, when we look at the United States, their national rate was 10%. Australia was 18%. Sweden was 15%. Mm-hmm. So nationally across Canada, the average rate is 24.5%. Well, Nova Scotia, not only is it above the average national rate of 29.4%, but when you dig down and you start to look at those numbers more specifically, what is concerning is that of the facilities that reported, 70% are well above even that and 29.4%. So 20 facilities had rates that were above 40%. Now, that's really concerning. When you think of those numbers. Mm-hmm. We're not talking, use in just a few cases. We're talking about 40 to 63.5%. Now, that's just unacceptable. And then 16% had rates above 40 and 6% above 50. So that's very concerning.
So, Gary, when you hear about people going and visiting loved ones and the state in which these drugs put their loved ones in, and you must get people asking questions about, is this necessary? What's wrong with mom or dad or whomever it is? What are some stories that you're hearing?
So quite often we hear that, Todd, and even amongst ourselves, we were in the early part of the ACE team. We were always, like I said earlier, concerned about, why our parents, our loved ones were so strung out on drugs when they didn't need it. And it wasn't until, Bonnie came along and she had, her loved ones were affected by this as well. And thankfully, with her background, she was able to put this paper together and with hard facts, so that we can now tell people and put it on our website just what to expect. And that's the other part of the ACE Team Facebook page, is to educate people. And with hard facts, you can't argue with hard facts to back us up. This is something that needs to be made public. And thank you for your show that we've gotten some public exposure for this, Todd, because
Right.
otherwise, just people will just never know.
Okay, so what are the recommendations, Bonnie?
Well, I'd like to highlight the fact that although this collaboration of national organizations have uncovered the research, they've also uncovered a solution, or they provided a solution, and it's called the Sparking for Change in the Appropriate Use of Antipsychotics Awards Program, and it's a program developed by the experts. It provides all the tools, the resources, webinars, coaching, everything that the long-term care facilities need to address the overuse of antipsychotics and give them tools and resources to learn how to manage challenging behaviors in other ways. So this online training program is being offered as we speak. It started in November 2024, and there is an opportunity for the long-term care facilities to address this problem internally. However, the deadline is October the 1st, 2025 to enter. And presently, when the ACE team approached the leadership of the seniors, the Minister Barbara Adams and Seniors and Long-Term Care Leadership Team, when we approached her and we said, hey, this is the problem, here's the solution. Are you going to recommend that the long-term care facilities actually enroll in this program to reduce their overprescription rates? And will you make it mandatory? So when we spoke with the leadership team, they said, we can't answer you. We can't say that we can't tell you which facilities have entered this program to move forward with a solution, and we can't promise that we'll make it mandatory. So we do have some recommendations for the minister, and we're asking her to make enrollment in this program, Sparking Change in the Appropriate Use of Antipsychotics Awards Program, or asking her to make it mandatory. We're asking her to approach the Nova Scotia College of Physicians and Surgeons to review the overprescribing rate of antipsychotics in long-term care. And we're asking her to report to the public, back to the public, what is her plan to reduce this? Because we are in a medical emergency. I mean, we see that there is, at least in larger cities in Canada, we see a fentanyl crisis where young people are bent over, slumped over from taking fentanyl. But we are seeing a similar crisis in long-term care of our elderly who do not have a voice, slumped over in their chairs from antipsychotics.
Okay, we're out of time, but Gary, is this report available online for public consumption?
Yes, Todd, if you go on to our Facebook page, it will be there if it's not there yet. But we were waiting to have this interview, and thank you so much for doing this, but it will be available to the public. Okay,
important information. Thank you so much, Bonnie. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Yeah,
have a good day.
Todd.
All right, take care. That's Bonnie Sherman and Gary MacLeod of the ACE team. Hope Air, Canada's national charity. We'll talk about that when we come back. All right, joining me here in studio is Jaclyn Sullivan, Atlantic Director at Hope Air. Jaclyn, thanks for joining the show. All right, let's see. We get the right mic on. Jaclyn, try that again. Thanks for joining the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so what is Hope Air all about?
So Hope Air is a national charity. We provide free, non-emergency medical travel support to patients in financial need who have to travel long distances to access medical care.
Okay, so the need is obviously great.
Yeah, the need is great and the need is growing. So we provide free flights, free accommodations, ground transportation to and from appointments, and meal vouchers to patients who have to travel typically more than 4 hours driving time to access medical care not available in their home communities. Mm-hmm. You know, the cost of everything is increasing, cost of living is increasing, cost of travel is increasing. Yeah. So we're seeing a huge increase in demand. And in fact, in Nova Scotia, our demand has more than doubled in the last 2 years.
Wow. Any particular age group or demographics?
So about 50% of the patients that we serve are children children or the elderly. So big users of healthcare. We provide support for medical escorts as well if they have to travel. Particularly families who have small children who may need to travel at a province for care. That means 2 flights for your parent and the child. It means meals, accommodations, ground transport. That can represent, thousands, if not tens of thousands of costs of dollars in cost. Many of the patients that travel with us have repeated travel out of province. So if you're looking at, 10 trips to Toronto a year, that can be tens of thousands of dollars, and that's not money that most families have just laying around.
Absolutely. What's the criteria? How do people submit or request?
Yeah, so the application is on our website, hopeair.ca. To be eligible, you do have to demonstrate financial need. So you have to attest to your household income from the year prior. We look at every application on a case-by-case basis. So things like, number of people in the household, if you have a child with a disability or you've lost your job or are on leave because of your illness, those things are all considered in each application. The average family who benefits from Hope Air services earns between $35,000 and $40,000 a year, but we do accept applications up to significantly higher than that if financial need is demonstrated. You have to have a confirmed medical appointment, and it has to be covered through your provincial health plan. Most of the patients we serve in Nova Scotia are traveling out of the province. There's often a need, and that will be covered under your provincial health plan. We also have a lot of patients that travel to Halifax from within the province, particularly regions like Cape Breton. And with flights now returning and there's more availability, want to make sure that everyone who could benefit from our program in Nova Scotia is aware, and they can apply at hopeair.ca.
Okay, do you have any, talk about corporate sponsors here? I suppose that's an important part of all this.
Absolutely. So we get our funding through, private donors, corporate donors and sponsors, community foundations, and a little bit from the provincial government here in the province. We're always looking for more. There's always a need. With the growing demand, we're sort of just meeting our capacity in the province right now. We're talking to the provincial government. That's part of why I'm here this week, to see if we can form a more enhanced relationship with them like we have in some other provinces like Prince Edward Island, Newfoundland and Labrador. But we turn to private partners to supplement that. So any corporation or individual donor who believes that Canadians should have equitable access to healthcare and that rural Canadians deserve to be able to access healthcare in the same manner that Canadians living in urban centres can, they can go to hopeair.ca and consider donating.
What's the vetting process? It must be difficult because I'm sure you must see so many applications and you want to help everybody, I'm sure. So what's that like to actually trying to make these decisions? I would think it'd be difficult.
Yeah, we have a client care team who reviews every application on a case-by-case basis. We are, as a charity, we want to help as many people as possible. So we do look at every case on its own merit, and we tend to err on the side of helping people if we can. The biggest thing is ensuring you have that confirmed appointment, ensuring that it's covered under your provincial health plan, being willing to, give us the ability to confirm all of that. And then, once you're confirmed and once, your application has been approved, one of the big benefits of what we provide is everything is booked up front. So there's no cost out of pocket to the patients or their families. And we have a client care team that handles all of the travel arrangements. So they book the flights, they book the accommodations. If there are changes, for example, your medical appointment gets moved up or canceled, we take care of all of the revision and changes to your travel itinerary. So it's a huge benefit to patients and families at a very vulnerable time.
How about the budget for your operating budget? I would think it's obviously growing and I would think quite large.
Yeah, across the country. I can't give you the exact number off the top of my head right now, but we have quite a large budget across the country. We're lucky to have really good partnerships with some travel partners like WestJet, like Porter, Uber. They all provide donations of travel support to us. So as a national charity, we're able to deliver this support on a pretty efficient basis, and we have a pretty lean team. 87 cents this year of every dollar that we earn goes directly to our mission in supporting patients. So very well-run charity, but with demand growing, we're always in need for additional support. This year in particular, anytime the cost of living goes up, anytime there's uncertainty in the economy, families are unable to support anything additional, right? So imagine yourself, you're a single mother with 2 small kids, you're just struggling to get by on $45,000 a year. You find out that your child is sick and they're going to have to travel 5 times this year to Toronto.
Wow.
Where are you going to get that money, right? So what we hear from our patients is they say that without Hope Air, they would have had to relocate to get closer to services. So whether that's leave a rural area of Nova Scotia and move to Halifax, or leave Halifax and move to Toronto, these are real decisions that these families have to make. They also say that they would consider, and a full third of the patients we support say without Hope Air, they would cancel or postpone their appointment. So that means they're going to get more ill. That means they're going to utilize healthcare services in their local community, maybe more inappropriately, going to emergency rooms, going to their GP more. So it's not just in the best interests of the individual patients for us to get them there quickly and affordably. It's also in the best interests of the health system.
Right. Okay, how do people learn more about Hope Air? With your website, obviously, what are all the channels?
Yeah, they can go to hopeair.ca, and there's information on there on the application process and FAQ. There's the ability to donate. And while I'm here in town, if anyone is interested in reaching out to me as the Atlantic Canadian Director, they can email me directly, jsullivan@hopeair.ca. Particularly anyone who's interested in donating, any companies out there who feel that they want to support equitable access to healthcare. We believe that where you live shouldn't determine if you live. So, rural communities of our region deserve to have that equitable access.
Well, I'm sure right now people listening, are interested in contributing and helping out. And I'm sure there are people listening right now who think, man, this is something that we could use as a family. So jsullivan at, just say your email.
Hopeair.ca.
Okay, jsullivan at hopeair.ca. And I jotted that down. So if somebody wants to get that later, give us a call and we'll pass along to you. Jaclyn, listen, it sounds like an amazing charity and amazing work that you guys are doing, and I wish you the continued best of luck. And let's have another chat about this down the road.
Absolutely. Thanks for helping me spread the word.
All right, you got it. That's Jaclyn Sullivan, Atlantic Director at Hope Air. When we come back, the Halifax Examiner, a piece written by Larry Hughes concerning the Dalhousie, Nova Scotia still has emissions targets. There we go. We'll be back.
Location, the lab. Quentin only has 24 hours to sell his car. Is that even possible? He goes to Carvana.com.
What is this, a movie trailer?
He ignores the doubters, enters his license plate. Wow, that's a great offer. The car is sold, but will Carvana pick it up in time for...
They'll literally pick it up tomorrow morning. Done with the dramatics?
Car selling in record time.
Save your time. Go to Carvana.com and sell your car today. Pickup fees may apply.
Right, joining us for a chat is Larry Hughes, Dalhousie University engineering professor whose areas of expertise includes energy systems and climate change. Larry Hughes, thanks for joining the show as always.
My pleasure, Todd.
All right, so a recent piece in the Halifax Examiner, an op-ed of yours, the tax has been axed, but Nova Scotia still has emissions targets. So if you could please put your education hat on and kind of give us a teaching 101 on targets and megatons and all the vernacular that's needed in order to understand what can be, for me anyway, a complex issue.
Okay. Anytime we burn a carbon fuel, typically gasoline, heating oil, coal, in the case of Nova Scotia Power, and natural gas, and so on, whenever we do that, there are emissions of carbon dioxide. For example, a liter of gasoline releases about 2.2, 2.3 kilograms of carbon dioxide. Now, what happens is, of course, the more we drive, the more electricity we use that comes from coal, the more natural gas we burn, and so forth. The emissions start to increase. And the emissions are associated with blocking of the sun's rays, or the heat from the sun's rays, from escaping the planet, and that is warming the planet. Now, in terms of individuals, Nova Scotians emit about 14 tons of carbon dioxide a year. Now, that's all the emissions from the automobiles we drive, our space heating, our home heating, our domestic hot water heating, coal, and everything else. In other words, basically what we're doing there is we're saying this is Nova Scotia's total emissions and this is our total population. And so we have about 13, 14 megatons of carbon dioxide, and a megaton is 1 million tons. And so if we emit 13 or 14 million megatons, and there are roughly 1 million Nova Scotians, we're about 14 tons per person. In Canada's case, larger population, more emissions, primarily from oil production in Western Canada. In that case, Canada's emissions per person are over 17 megatons. Now, it's deceiving to be talking about tons per person for the simple reason that as your population increases, if you get a very large population growth but not much growth in emissions, your emissions per capita, your emissions per person will fall. And what we see in Canada's case, and it's rather it's terribly embarrassing because it shows the policy failures left, right, and center. In 2005, Canada's average was 23.5 tons per person. In 2020, because of the pandemic, it fell quite dramatically to just under 18 tons per person. And by 2023, it had fallen to 17.3 megatons. And you may say, my gosh, going from just under 18 to, say, 17.9 or so, down to 17.3, that's great. We must have done all kinds of things. Yes, what happened is Canada's population increased by 2 million people. So if you've got roughly the same emissions but more people, there's going to be less emissions per capita. So in a nutshell, and this isn't quite what your question was, Canada's emissions per capita are rather embarrassing because we haven't really been doing what we should have been doing. Canada's emissions have more or less remained stable. The starting date of 2005, which was Prime Minister Harper's date he chose when we would start, from which we would start counting our emissions reductions. By 2020, we had declined about 65 megatons to about 680 megatons. And you can say, well, that's quite a drop, 65 megatons over the 20 years or so, 15 years. Unfortunately, the country has much bolder emissions targets. Canada wants to, the current government, which is, we will see what happens in a couple of weeks in the election, but Canada's present targets are to reduce emissions by 40 to 45% below 2005 levels by 2030. And it just shows the absurdity of this proposal. That would mean we would have to reduce from 2024 until 2030, we would have to reduce 34 to 40 megatons a year. And no one anywhere, no country, other than perhaps Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union, has ever come close to constantly reducing emissions. In our case, it would be for 7 years, from 34 to 40 megatons a year. It was just an impossible number, and that was never talked about. It was just said, well, this is where we want to go, to just over 400 megatons. So long and the short of it is, we all have emissions. Each one of us, in Nova Scotia's case, and we can talk about this more if you like, in Nova Scotia's case, we're down to about 14 megatons per person, which is actually very impressive what's happened in Nova Scotia. But nationally, we're about 17.3 or whatever. So I hope that sort of clarified some things in terms of our emissions, where they come from. and what we're doing individually.
Okay, so the consumer-facing carbon tax and the exodus of that, is that a good thing or a bad thing or neither? What's your thoughts on that?
If you look at what's happened over it was incredibly poorly rolled out. Nobody, well, unless you were really interested in it, like me, you really had no idea what was going on, because the carbon tax was hidden. You didn't know that it was 11 and 14 cents per liter of gasoline. That was never printed on the receipts. People did see it on the home heating fuel, and with the home heating fuel there was a huge pushback, and the federal government backed off. In electricity, you don't see it. It's rolled in. Electricity is actually very small, but you don't see these things. So if and I have really, in the end, no idea what the objective of the federal carbon tax was, in the respect that the tax was being applied, but if you don't know it's being applied, well, how can you learn from it? How can you say, oh my gosh, I'm emitting too much. What else? How can I change my habits or whatever? And the flip side to that was the quarterly carbon rebate that the federal government paid, and there is. And the idea behind the carbon rebate was you were paid it at the start of the quarter, the start of the 3 months, in anticipation of what your carbon costs would be. But a lot of people, it was just an automatic deposit from the government, and it never said that it was the Climate Change Action Plan or Canada Carbon Rebate. So people could never tell that. So again, you just had more money from the government. And what I just said a moment ago, the current next quarter is April, May, and June of this year, but the carbon tax ended at the end of March. But the federal government is still paying one more carbon tax rebate, which makes no sense because the carbon tax, except in a few rare cases, has been removed, and people aren't paying it anymore. So you can take this additional funding this additional payment from the government any way you like.
Okay, so the bottom line is it appears, based on all what you said, that the targets are unrealistic, and we don't really have a realistic plan to get to where we need to be. Is that a correct summation of what you're getting at here?
Oh, well, yes. I mean, there were grand plans. It was based on all kinds of marvelous ideas that there would be huge reductions over an incredibly short period of time, primarily in oil and natural gas extraction out west, which of course got Western Canadians very upset. And the one that was quite successful has been targeting coal for electricity generation. Alberta made huge pushes and is the 2030 target. All the major emitting provinces, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Saskatchewan, and Alberta, who were using coal. Alberta's got off it. Saskatchewan's trying to do what is referred to as carbon capture and storage. So the coal they burn is the carbon dioxide that is released is stored underground in geological formations under the assumption it won't escape in the future. New Brunswick is winding down its coal, and Nova Scotia, as I said earlier, is very impressively wound down its coal in electrical generation, primarily because of Muskrat Falls and local wind.
Okay, Larry, listen, I appreciate your time as always. Thanks so much, and we'll do it again.
Hope so.
All right, take care. Larry Hughes, Dalhousie University engineering professor, whose area of expertise includes energy systems and climate change. Nova Scotia General Employment Union Correctional Officers rally for better wages. We'll chat with Sandra Mullen about this when we come back. Sandra Mullen is president of the NSGEU and joins us for a chat. Sandra, thanks for joining the show. As always, we appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, so correctional officers rallying for better wages this week. Tell us about the turnout, first of all.
Well, it was a great turnout, and we had really good weather, of course. But it's just a commitment. We had folks join us from Cape Breton and the New Glasgow facilities who took their day off or their vacation days to come in and support the folks who have been trying to make change here. It was a good turnout, and the message is the same. We need government to push this across the line. We have been working diligently with them, trying to improve the recruitment retention aspect of it all. The department is training more folks, bringing people in. We've made offer, and they use our facility to do that training. Mm-hmm. But the issue is retaining the folks who are there, the senior team who are the most trained and the experts in handling a lot of the very difficult situations. We need to retain them. They're getting in there. These folks are finding out that, there are way more jobs, even within the Department of Justice, paying more money than working in the facilities.
Yeah, sheriff services is one of those jobs. So
that's one, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And the inequity at the start was that the sheriffs were paid $2 more an hour than our folks working inside the facility. Mm-hmm. Now that has changed. They are now paid, because of a reclass issue, they're paid $4 more than our folks who spend the 24/7 with these inmates. So we are working with the department, and we have undertaken a process of reclassification. It is still not resolved. This is now a retention issue. These folks deserve to be paid for the work that they do. We know that. Mm-hmm. It's very high-risk work. We know that too. And the department knows that. So we've done what we can. We're waiting for this to get resolved at that reclass situation.
All right. So when you say reclass situation, are we talking a contract, or where are we when it comes to?
Sure. The reclassification is about taking the job description that is being done. Yeah. Certainly, it gets out of date quickly. This is, it can go 10, 15 years so what is the work that they are doing? So this reclass takes a look at all of the issues involved in the job. Mm-hmm. The other side of it is the bargaining table. And so they are part of our civil service contract. We are at the bargaining table. But that issue of resolve with the bargaining, folks are, you're at the bargaining table. Should we get a monetary increase through our contract negotiations, that impacts everybody. Mm-hmm. So the divide remains the same. Folks may get an increase, as we've seen with many other contracts, the economic adjustment, but it's going to increase the other folks too. So it's still the issue that the sheriffs are paid $4 more. They work with the same clientele, but our folks inside the facilities are there 24/7.
All right. So just for some clarity, the reclassification can be created or drafted before a contract or during contract negotiations, or outside of a contract. Is that correct?
Anytime. Yep, we can do the reclass process anytime. We started this just before Christmas. We've met with them. We've presented. We've done all of that, and the employer, they too are party to this. Mm-hmm. And so now it's about taking a look at what the evidence is and getting this across the line with the Public Service Commission.
Okay, what's the government saying? What's their response? What's the feedback been?
Well, we have, I spoke to this many times. We have been through 3 ministers, deputy ministers, 3 different executive directors in the 3 years that I've been representing these members. So we know that the executive team is in full support of the fact that these folks should be paid better for the work that they do, that their jobs have evolved and have changed, and they recognize the same department that represents the sheriffs, so they realize that those are two different jobs, So we are working together to get this across, but the bottom or the end result comes with government to say yes, this is warranted. So they asked us to go the reclass process. We've done that as quick as we've ever done anything. We pull together things, folks, to come in and write up these job descriptions, tell us what's going on there now, and so we've done our part very well, and we've had those hearings. It's a matter of getting this across the line.
All right,
and our folks remain underpaid.
And absolutely. And tell us about staffing shortages. I'm sure that this is a real challenge, and asking people to work overtime and double overtime, and God knows what the asks are of your members here.
Well, exactly. The staffing level has improved. However, the folks that are staffing these facilities right now are, a lot of them, junior staff. Your senior staff are more highly trained to handle violent outbursts, difficult situations that do exist in these facilities. So injury can cause a short staff situation to be even shorter staff. So we need to make sure that our staffing levels maintain. And we've saw so many come in, newly trained, realize what the work is on the inside, and go out the back door. Yeah. So, and there are better opportunities out there. So we know we need to stem that. We need to retain these folks. So, as much as we've worked hard at recruiting, and we are working with the department on that, and they've improved those levels, those folks are not yet fully trained.
Right. What's a realistic timeline when it comes to a reclassification being done here?
They can take months. No, we're not familiar with the process, but it also can happen quickly. They've asked us to do our part. We've done that. It's been done, by February, and we are sitting here waiting. So it's up to government to push this across the line.
Okay, Sandra, appreciate your time. Thanks so much. We'll talk again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, take care. Sandra Mullen, NSGEU President. If you have a health-related question or concern, Dr. Gillis will be by for house calls. Give us a call at 902-405-6000. Again, if you've got a health-related question or concern that you would like addressed, Dr. Gillis will do his best. 902-405-6000. House calls when we come back.
Thanks.
It's time for house calls with Dr. John Gillis. Dr. John Gillis has a wealth of experience, decades of experience and knowledge, and ready to impart some of that wisdom, if at all possible, to you via the phone. Give us a call at 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us for house calls with Dr. Gillis. Again, 902-405-6000. Dr. John Gillis, welcome to the show as always.
Hey, sure. How are we doing?
Well, what do you think of the Leafs in Ottawa? What a matchup that'll be, eh? Lots of excitement, I think.
That's going to be something. Yeah, I wish they'd decide what days they're playing them. They haven't Monday and then Sunday, Tuesday. So yeah,
they haven't finalized the schedule yet.
Doesn't seem so.
No,
to get a straight answer. So
yeah. Are you going to go to any of the games? Do you think? Or are you going to try to?
That's the plan.
Nice, excellent. So, what do you think of it's going to be a nice change not running into a Florida team or Boston in the first round anyway. At least it'll be a change.
Yeah, that's it. I think it's going to be good, but let Florida and Tampa beat themselves up and see what happens.
So, Leafs Ottawa predictions? I know who you want to win, but what's your prediction?
I think they'll pull it out, but I think it's going to be tough, and I think they know that. It's going to go 6 or 7. Yeah,
it'll be good. Good for ratings anyway. Good for Rogers, so that's good for us. All right, so 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. That is the way to get a hold of us if you've got a question for Dr. John Gillis. He is ready and willing to do his best to answer your question. 902-405-6000. Let's kick it off with James. Hello, James.
Hi. Thanks for taking the call, as always.
Sure.
A question for Dr. Ross, kind of a big picture question, not a condition-related question. If you had $10 million to spend on the healthcare system, how would you allocate the $10 million? Emergency care, cancer care, public health, whatever.
I'd spend it on trying to evaluate how we get more for the money we're already spending. Flow and efficiency, incentivizing people to work, and incentivizing productivity, which we lack at this time.
Wow, brilliant. As a former public servant who worked at the Department of Health and Wellness, I am humbled. I think that's a great response, so I'll just shut up. Thanks.
Okay, there you go. Take care. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. So when it comes to healthcare spending, Dr. Gillis, look, we could always improve, I'm sure, but do you feel as though that we are improving? Are we heading in the right direction when it comes to utilizing resources? Dr. Gillis, are you there? Are you on mute?
I lose you.
Yeah, there we go. Okay.
Here we go.
Yeah, go ahead. Did you hear the question?
No, one more time if you don't mind.
Okay, so do you feel as though that we are improving when it comes to just that, utilizing and maximizing the investment and the dollars?
Not really, no. I mean, this has been something that's bothered me for a long time, that we continue to invest and spend money on things, but we don't necessarily get bang for a buck, for what we're spending, and it's frustrating. You've heard me talk numerous times about, the demographics changes, which have been positive, but it means, doctors are seeing fewer people, and then we put people on salary, and they're seeing even fewer people, and it just it magnifies itself, and we don't do anything about it, and it frustrates me, it drives me crazy, but nothing's happening.
Yeah, travel nurses, this has been another issue where we've spent scads of money and trying to get our arms around it and get that problem solved. But that's an example, I think, of a knee-jerk reaction in order to deal with shortages and in which was clearly got out of control. What are your thoughts?
What was happening for a while was we had our nurses going from here to Moncton, and nurses from Moncton coming here, and getting paid double and triple. And I don't begrudge these fine professionals for taking an opportunity, but counterintuitive very much to do so.
Absolutely. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Wanted not to get too political here, but this story is political. It involves the United States. I'll read a bit of it off the CTV website, and I'll get your take on it. Canadian health experts warn the fallout from thousands of job cuts at the U.S. Food and Drug Administration on April 1st could disrupt the flow of safety information on drugs, medical devices, and food to Canada. The story goes on to say for years, Canadian agencies responsible for monitoring food and pharmaceutical safety have worked closely with regulators around the world. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, vast resources, and global influence have played a role in informing decisions in Canada on issues such as safety warnings and recalls of dangerous foods and drugs from the market. However, sweeping changes to the FDA since U.S. President Donald Trump took office could impact the benefits Canada derives from the historic collaboration, reducing the quality and availability of information about harmful drugs and food products. That's a lot of information to throw at you, but what's your takeaway on this? Are concerns? What are your thoughts in general?
Well, absolutely. I mean, the FDA has led the way on drug approvals, vaccine approvals, safety in a lot of areas, for many, many years. The European agencies are good as well, but, the FDA has been the leader, and, Health Canada, are very effective, Public Health Agency of Canada, but the FDA has been the leader, and, if they get gutted, it's going to have a trickle-down effect on a lot of things. And, it just, some things are political, and, some things I understand why the administration here in the U.S., I'm in Florida right now, are doing, but a lot of it is just nonsensical, and this is definitely.
Yeah, the reason there's no rhyme or reason other than just slashing for the sake of slashing, and political ideology seems to be driving the bus here, which is never good.
Yeah, I mean, political ideology is one thing, but when you're harming your own people, including perhaps those with the same ideology, it just doesn't make sense. And we're seeing that with education, we're seeing that with healthcare, we're seeing that with just basic things like drug and vaccine safety. I mean, we're seeing people dying of measles because we have a circus clown as the Health and Human Services Secretary. Say circus clown. I think I can say
you can say you certainly can. RFK. So again, ideology is obviously at play here. To that, as measles outbreaks popped up across the U.S. this winter, pediatricians waited for the nation's public health agency to send a routine but important letter that outlines how they could help stop the spread of the illness. It wasn't until last week, after the number of cases grew to more than 700, and a second young child in Texas has died from a measles infection, that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention finally issued its correspondence. So is RFK, is he trying to walk a tight line here at all, or is he still embedded in anti-vaccination camp?
Well, I think he's still there. I mean, I think he's to some degree had his hand forced, but I mean, I listened to the interview with the father of the, I think a 6-year-old who died, and he still firmly believes that he made the right decision, and it just, really blows my mind as a healthcare provider, but also as a parent. I just don't get it. But
how far reaching are the tentacles of what's going on in the United States into Canada? Do we see it here in pockets of Nova Scotia as well?
I think look, we could go on for days about this. I think we're seeing an interesting patriotic reaction right now. There are people that are, who think that way, but I think we're increasingly seeing a very patriotic reaction, across party lines to, preserving what we have and, the things Canadian that we cherish and respect. So hopefully that trend continues.
Indeed. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us for house calls with Dr. John Gillis. If you've got a health-related question or concern, give us a buzz. We've got Dr. Gillis till the top of the hour and get some room for you as well. 902-405-6000. House calls continues when we come back. All right, it's House Calls with Dr. John Gillis. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. If you've got a health-related question or concern, give us a call, 902-405-6000. Karen's done just that. Hello, Karen.
Hello. I have a question for the doctor, please.
Sure.
And it's in regard to radon, the gases in your home. I'm wondering if there's some type of a test to take to find out if they've been affected by it.
Having a hard time hearing that, Todd.
Yeah, repeat that again, please, Karen. Just
radon in your home, like carbon monoxide. There's radon, I guess, in the ground. And my neighbor, he tested his home, and his level in his home was like 18, which is supposed to be 7. And I'm wondering, and his wife passed away of lung cancer, and it says it takes 10 to 20 years for that effect to happen. But anyway, I'm wondering if there's some kind of a test I can literally take to find out if I am affected with this radon gas poisoning or...
I don't think it's a test to see if you personally have been affected. I think you can test your own home and see if, the levels are high. It relates to a number of different things, the ground, the foundation, what gets into your home and doesn't get into your home. So I would probably start by testing it and then, try to cross-reference the levels you get with, the risk, what you can do about it, and, to determine if you need to do something about it. But if you're asking if there's a blood test to see what your radon count is, I maybe someone could correct me, but I don't think so.
You don't think there's anything like that? Okay. No, I was just curious because if our home if the level is high, what the event results, like I said, is lung cancer. So there's nothing one can do if, I don't know how long this gentleman's home, he's right next door to us, has been at a 17 level. And it takes a while, I guess, to do these tests. So I just thought maybe there might be a shortcut with a blood test or
not that I'm aware of.
Maybe.
Yeah. Karen, I do know that there's remediation that can be done once the levels are discovered and that they're deemed too high. The remediation can be done. Aside from that, I don't know if there's anything you can do to deal with what you've already ingested, but you can definitely remediate your existing property. Karen, thanks for the call.
All right, thanks.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Barry, hello.
Good morning. Dr. Gillis, I want to say right off the bat that I think it's great that you provide this weekly service to the public. And I have a question. Yeah, and I have a question regarding terminology. Back in 2002, I went to the ER and I had appendicitis. And the doctors that saw me, there was 7, one after the other, all thought I had a hernia. And I had never been in a hospital for probably 40 or 50 years, so I wasn't familiar with the routine. But I was concerned that you heard stories about operating on the wrong leg and the wrong arm and so on. So I got up and left. And that night, my appendix burst. So the next morning I went in, and luckily I'd stopped by my family doctor on the way home and got a mild antibiotic. I think that's what saved my life. But the next day I went in, and they were persistent that I had a hernia. And at that point I just said, well, do whatever you want to do then. And they did a right-hand hemicolectomy on me, and that was back in 2002. And since then I've had 4 bowel surgeries, and I've lost a lot of weight. So my question basically is, and I don't want to annoy you about this, but the terminology in the healthcare system and the fact that it's resident, senior resident, junior resident, and so on, and that the doctors always introduce themselves as doctors, whether they're a junior resident or a senior resident. I found out later on that the fellow that was going to book me for the operation was a senior resident. And I don't think, I'm not sure, but I don't think that he has the authority to do that. But I didn't know all of this. And so I've now suffered for many years with these bowel surgeries. So I would like to emphasize or suggest that junior and senior residents should identify themselves as that, whether they wear a badge on their uniform but please don't introduce yourself as a doctor, because theoretically you're still in training.
Is there a question there, or is that more of a statement?
Well, the last time I spoke to you, we disagreed on that, and that's fine. But
what are the odds that I've changed my mind?
But anyway,
another crack at me.
Well, we heard you're in Florida. He thought you might be in a good mood, being in sunny Florida.
Oh, I'm in a great mood. It's 25 degrees outside, and the Leafs are in first place. But
beautiful day, day. I couldn't give 2 hoots about the Leafs, but
okay, all right, all right, Barry. I don't think we're going to get any further with this one.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks. All right, take care. 902-405-6000. It's worth a crack anyway. Debbie, hello.
Yes, hi. Dr. Gillis, I had the measles as a child. And number one, is there a chance of me getting them again? And secondly, I don't know 100% for sure, but I think I had the vaccination when I was a child. There's no way of me confirming that now. So I didn't know if I should get the vaccination again.
I don't know if this is a connection problem on my end, but I missed the first part. You had what when you were a child?
Oh, I had the measles when I was a child.
Right.
And so I didn't know if I could get them again, and I'm not 100% sure if I had the vaccination, and there's no way that I can confirm that.
And what year were you born?
56.
Yes,
I had them when I was about 10 years old.
Yeah, there's 2 things. Most people who've had measles are immune, and the data show that if you're born below 1970, before 1970, you don't need a booster anyway because you've probably been exposed to it and or developed immunity accordingly. So that's sort of the what we look at. So you should be good.
Okay, super. Thank you.
Don't be hitting any measles parties just for fun, but you should be good.
Okay, thank you. Have a good
All right,
day.
thanks so much. 902-405-6000. And measles parties are a real thing, aren't they, Dr. Gillis?
Yeah, unfortunately, it defies belief in some cases. That I just can't imagine putting the child at risk. But here we are. And
the philosophy, not to perpetuate it, is that if you get exposed to it, then you'll be immune to it. That's the philosophy. Is that it?
Yeah, which is true if you get a mild case, but if you get a severe case and have severe lung inflammation, which is what unfortunately took these 2 youngsters from Texas, you can die from it, and it's just not worth the risk, and it's idiocy.
Fair enough. 902-405-6000. Give us a call if you'd like to chat with Dr. John Gillis. Again, 902-405-6000. House Calls continues when we come back.
Max.
All right, House Calls continues with Dr. John Gillis. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. If you have a health-related question or concern that you would like addressed, give us a call at 902-405-6000. Matt, hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
Doing well.
All right. So I'm looking to speak to the doctor.
Yeah, you're ready. You're ready to go.
Okay. So, doctor, I've had tension headaches for about a year now. They started with just this intense bursts of pressure that would last for like a minute or two. And then over time, they became more frequent but less intense to the point that it's constant pressure in the front of the head. My doctor hasn't really been sure what's going on, but a chiropractor said he thought it was a tension headache. And then I was speaking to my dentist, and she had suggested temporomandibular joint disorder. So throughout all this, I've had periods where I felt like maybe my throat's closing up a bit, like my tongue or my throat is like quivering. And I'm wondering, would that be caused by the TMJ?
Probably not. I mean, quivering and the feeling of closing your throat is pretty nonspecific. I mean, a lot of things can give you a weird feeling in your throat, something you ate, acid reflux, dental infections, dental pain. The brain is very wired to protect the airway of the throat. So there's a lot of things, that can do that. For me, the biggest thing with headaches is to rule out serious causes and to, focus on treating the pain and, getting someone feeling better and functional.
Well, we've been through all the major stuff. I've had MRIs on the head, CTs on the head, Yeah. They've gone through all that. Nothing's come up. The dentist had felt my jaw, and she said, it's very clenched. I had gotten Botox treatments last week, but it's supposed to take a few weeks before I feel anything. But I guess when I said it felt like my throat was closing up, it's not closing up. It just kind of gave that feeling like there's something weird going on. And I had read online that TMJ could affect the spasms, but I wanted to just ask you, if you don't think that's what it is, then I'm not sure.
You can get masseter spasm in the muscles of around your jaw, and that sometimes can give people a tight feeling across their throat. So, that's certainly possible. The bottom line is, if your throat is not actually closing or your tongue's not actually swelling, that's a good thing. And, I think you're on the right track to treating the problem without, and you've ruled out the bad stuff.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you very much. Can I ask you quickly, how would I go about getting copies of the MRI and CT? I checked the app, and it just gives me a record that it happened.
Yeah, you can get a report from medical records, or your own doctor would have that. Getting a disc or a jump drive with the images on it. They'd have to probably burn you a DVD, or increasingly there's electronic links to send them, but I don't know if NS Health has that yet. But talking medical records would be your starting point.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, good luck. Take care. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. If you've got a health-related question, give us a call. Get some time with the doctor. 902-405-6000. Dr. Gillis, this story, I want to read a bit of it on the Global News website and get your take on it. Autism diagnoses are on the rise in the United States, with new federal data showing 1 in 31 8-year-olds were identified with autism spectrum disorder in 2022, the highest rate ever recorded in the country. A report released Tuesday by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention found that autism diagnoses have climbed across the U.S. over the past few decades. It also highlighted a major shift. Black, Hispanic, and Asian children are now more likely to be diagnosed with autism than white children. Any take on this, or any thoughts on this, or what's going on here?
Yeah, I saw that. I didn't get a chance to dig into it in great detail. I think what I took from it, at least at first quick glance, is that most of this is awareness and diagnostics and treatment. A lot of these cases were being missed before. We weren't looking for them. I don't necessarily think there's been a massive spike in the incidence, meaning many people who have it. It's how many people are being recognized and treated.
Yeah, for sure. 902-405-6000. Did you have a follow-up, Dr. Gillis? Sorry,
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us again if you've got a quick question for the doctor. This one here, there are fewer people in Nova Scotia who need a primary care doctor, according to the latest data by the Provincial Health Agency. As of April 1st, just over 93,000 people on the registry, a drop of around 2,200 from the month prior. Nova Scotia Health said in a release that means that 8.8% of the province's population is still on the list. The number of people on the list has been dropping over the last several months. In February, the Health Authority says 8,400 names were removed from the registry. January was the last time the wait list was over 100,000 people. So obviously this is good news, but what's going on here? Do you think that is it recruitment? Is it retention? What's happening here? Why do you think the numbers are heading in the right direction?
Well, I think it's hopefully a little bit of both. I think we've got more people coming in. We have more people staying. We've got more NPs available, and hopefully bit by bit this trend will continue, and we'll get more and more people off the list. I have to be positive about hearing those numbers.
Okay. All right, listen, Doctor, I know you're in Florida and you're busy today, so we're going to let you go early because you've got other commitments. We thank you so much for doing it, and we'll talk next week. How's that sound?
Much a pleasure. Thanks, Todd.
All right,
Bye.
Take care. That's Dr. John Gillis. That's House Calls. And we do that each and every Wednesday. And again, the doctor's in Florida. He's very busy, so we will give him the extra time off. And in order to fill that time, why not talk to Clinton Wilkins about the Bank of Canada announcement? We'll do that next. We'll be back. The Bank of Canada held its key policy rate at 2.75%, its first pause after 7 consecutive cuts. Uncertainty around U.S. tariffs made it impossible to issue regular economic forecasts, according to Tiff Macklem. Joining us to talk about all of this, of course, is our mortgage guru, Clinton Wilkins. Clinton, thanks for joining the show.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
All right, so thoughts in general, surprise? What are your thoughts here?
Earlier this week, we really were projecting that there was going to be a hold. But when the job numbers came out, I think most economists were 50-50 on if it was going to be a cut or a hold. I think this hold is really primarily driven by the shift in policy in the U.S. And the trade policy really has impacted the Bank of Canada's decision. I think the Bank of Canada has left the door open to more cuts. I will be very optimistic in saying that we will see maybe another 50 basis points in cuts later this year. Again, we're going to be watching what is going on with inflation and what is going on with the job numbers going forward.
Okay, so obviously, if you've got if you're carrying a line of credit or if you've got a variable mortgage or whatever, it's you always like to see a decline because that means you'll pay less, right? So, but
Exactly.
Conversely, it's not an increase, which is good.
It's definitely not an increase, and the door is open to further decreases. So I think that's really important to note. Normally, the way that it works when the Bank of Canada starts cutting rates, and there were 7 consecutive cuts up until now. So basically, a year ago, the rate cuts started. Typically, we go into an environment where the rates continue to cut. Then we go into a plateau. And then typically, we would go into an increase period. Right now, the Bank of Canada is being very cautious. They want to make sure that inflation is not going to rise, especially with the whole tariff environment. I can't even tell you, Todd, today what is going on with tariffs. I think by and large, most people don't know exactly what's going on because there's been so much noise. There's been so many changes. So that's something that is obviously a big concern for the Bank of Canada. And we're obviously going to continue to monitor it. The one thing I do want to call out is fixed rates have increased over the last few days and weeks, primarily because institutional investors, like banks, for example, are investing in buying 10-year bonds. And the fixed rates are really driven off of what is going on in the bond market. Retail investors like you and I, we have gone to the stock market and we bought stocks over the last few weeks because everything has been on sale, but the institutional investors have really gone to the bond market, and that is what has continued to drive these fixed rates up. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty out there for consumers. And, I think a variable rate is still a great product. And I think we'll continue to see those variable rate continue to go down over the next few months and hopefully into the end of this year.
Yeah, you're talking with the equity market and the bond market, and the bond market is really kind of is one of the real indicators that when the bond market softens, that's when some people, because that's kind of a real consumer confidence benchmark indicator, right? So that's very serious. When the bond market starts going south, that's when economists start paying attention. Am I wrong or right on that?
I think it's something that they're keeping an eye on all the time, Todd. And that's something that goes up and down and typically in concert with what would happen in the stock market. But right now we're in one of these situations, and it's really just driven by what's gone on in the U.S., that things are really separating in terms of, instead of moving together.
All right, how is this all?
So we may be in a situation where the Bank of Canada does more cuts here later this year, and we may see the fixed rates increase. And typically, a variable rate and Bank of Canada would be lower than what's going on with the fixed rates. And right now, the rates are very similar to each other.
All right. So how is this impacting the housing market and in general, all this flux and insecurity about what's happening here? How is this impacting the housing and mortgage world?
There was an article out this morning that basically said the optimism from realtors and the real estate market in Canada has really been muted now with what is going on. Especially what's going on in Ontario, the job losses, and in Alberta. The interesting thing, Todd, we're almost in this little microcosm here in Atlantic Canada and in Halifax. Our economy is continuing along, and we're not just driven by things like manufacturing, which is going to be heavily impacted by trade policy in the U.S. So I'm very optimistic here in Nova Scotia and in Halifax. I don't think it's that same optimism across the country. So I think, the optimism that the real estate market was back and really booming across the country, I think is going to be muted by what's going on in the U.S. But again, that can change tomorrow. And I almost feel like we're on Survivor or one of these reality shows. We need to expect the unexpected.
All right. So what's some advice that you give some of your customers, some of your clients who have a lot of concerns? Obviously, I'm sure you're getting tons of phone calls. And you guys do a great job maintaining connections with your clients anyway, with yearly reviews. But what are you telling people who are nervous right now about all of this?
I can tell you, I think the anxiety and the mental health and the uncertainty from consumers is at an all-time high, Todd. I really encourage everyone to seek the advice of someone that they're going to trust. Sometimes it's not just the lowest rate is the best rate. Having the advice is very, very important. And I think it's looking at your options. For example, in our office, we're reaching out to a ton of clients that we did mortgages for the last couple of years. If you remember, Todd, 2 years ago, a fixed rate was in the 6% range. So things really have come down overall about 2% in the last 2 years. So we need to remember that the rates still are lower than they were, but everybody's situation is different. And that's why I think it's really important to evaluate where you're at and seek the advice of someone that you're going to trust.
All right, put on your prognostication hat, your prediction hat, and tell us what you think is going to happen over the next few weeks, next few months with rates here. What's your instinct tell you?
My crystal ball is broken right now, but I think the rates are going to continue to soften. That's the overall sentiment. And I don't want, consumers to think, hey, we're going to hold. Now we're going to see fixed rates go up. We're going to see variable rates go up. That's not really what I'm saying here. I think this is a moment in time that we're basically taking pause, evaluating, and I think we're going to continue to see rates go down. And the demand here in Halifax and Atlantic Canada, I think, is very, very high. We had a lot of pent-up demand the last 18 months, 24 months. And I can tell you there's been a lot of activity in the market so far for 2025, and I think it's going to be a busy year.
Right. We continue to hear from some people who suggest that we've got a housing bubble or a housing crisis is on the horizon. But what are your thoughts on that?
I think we definitely have a supply issue here.
Yeah.
I think our population is going to continue to grow in Halifax, and we're not getting enough units online.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's certainly a lot of apartments that have come on recently in the downtown core, Todd. I'm all about building on the corridors, Wise Road, Yonge Street, where the studio is, Roby Street. I'm all about building that up. But we need housing of all types.
Mm.
And we're not building enough single-family rows and freehold properties for clients to buy. I think part of the reason that we have a supply issue, and I said this before, but it's a little old lady and the little old man didn't have an apartment to go into, so they didn't sell their home for a first-time home buyer to get into the market. I think that's going to start righting itself, especially when we see more of these apartments coming online.
Yeah, for sure. And when it comes to, I guess, more timing the market and trying to get the exact precise time when the rate is what you would hope and that the housing market itself is exactly what you were looking for, that's difficult to time all of that. What's your advice when it comes to those people who are waiting for the perfect moment to purchase?
Well, if you're waiting for the perfect moment, you're going to be waiting a really long time.
Yeah.
That's what I tell. That's what I tell folks, and that's what I tell our clients. You're just dating the rate. So everyone needs to remember that a rate is typically anywhere from 6 months up to 10 years. The rate is going to change. The purchase price that you pay for the real estate, that's what you're marrying. Mm-hmm. So you need to be okay with what you bought. You need to be happy with the security. And I think if you're going to buy a property, you need to be committed that you're going to be in this property for 5 to 10 years. We hope that real estate values are going to continue to increase. But if you're going to buy a property, you need to be committed to that property. I'm less concerned about the rate. Yes, I'm in the rate business. I'm in the mortgage finance business, but the rates change and we can always change the rate. It's a lot easier to change your mortgage than it is for you to sell your home and buy another one.
All right, and the stress test is still applicable?
Stress test is still a thing, and we're qualifying all new transactions on a stress test. If it's a renewal and we're moving you from lender to lender, as long as there's no new money, no stress test. So it's really positive for people that are coming up for renewal. They don't need to qualify with the stress test. We still would go through the normal application process when we're looking at income, assets, and credit, but they don't have to qualify with the stress test, which is awesome. So in terms of moving lenders at renewal, it really is creating, I think, more competition, which really means the consumer is going to get the best possible financing for their needs.
All right, so obviously with 2.75%, the stress test would put that at what? What would you need to be qualifying at in order to meet the stress test?
That's a really good point. 2.75 is the key overnight rate. The actual prime rate for most lenders is 4.95. So the stress test is 2% above the contract rate. So for example, let's say we were giving a consumer a fixed rate at 3.99, Todd, we would qualify them at 5.99.
Right.
So 2% above the contract rate.
And the purpose of the stress test is just to ensure that the consumer can afford it if in fact there are hikes and bumps to the rate. That's basically
and thank goodness we did.
Yeah.
Think about the mortgages that we did 5 years ago at 2%.
Right.
We qualified those folks at 5.25 or whatever the rate was at that time. And a lot of those consumers that came up over the last year and 2 years were renewing into mortgages that were in 5% plus.
Right.
They qualified when we did the mortgage at that higher rate. So we had very low losses here in Canada, and Canadians, by and large, make their mortgage payments on time.
Indeed. Clinton, always great. Appreciate it very much, and we'll talk again soon, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Todd. Have a great rest of your day.
All right, take care. Clinton Wilkins, our mortgage guru. Again, 2.75% is what the key policy rate with the Bank of Canada will be held at. After a number of drops, it's the first hold. A hold is better than an increase, though. All right, we've got some time for you, folks. What is on your mind on this Wednesday, 902-405-6000? Perhaps you might want to talk about the federal election. I'm sure that some of you will have some things to say about the federal election. We've got a debate, a French language debate going tonight, the English debate tomorrow night. I think the timing of these debates are not good. heading into a long weekend, in particular the English debate, Thursday night, I just think a lot of people won't be interested in it. And not only that, but the news cycle the next day, Friday, will be Good Friday, so people won't be plugged in. We don't have a show, for example. So I just find that the timing of the debates is bad in general. And, of course, the Montreal Canadiens hockey game was preempted or pushed back the French debate, which is really, let's face it, that's all about Quebec. Anyway, what's your takeaway on whatever you want to get into? 902-405-6000. Give us a call again, 902-405-6000. Your calls when we come back. All right, taking your calls, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. The debates go to this tonight, the French language debate and the English debate. We're talking with the federal election, of course. And my question to you is do you care? Is it something that you'll be paying any attention to? I think that the English debate on a Thursday night, heading into a long weekend, Easter long weekend, is strange. The timing of it, I don't understand. If you want to maximize people and involvement, then I just think that it's just a strange time to do it. First of all, because as mentioned, it's the night of a long weekend. People generally do other things. And secondly, there's the follow-up. If you were to have it on a Thursday, or let's say this was a normal Thursday night, and not heading into a long weekend, then Friday you would have the news cycle and shows like ours, and people could react and call in and whatever. But that's going to be neutered to a point because people will be home doing other things or away or whatever, traveling, whatever it might be, including our show. We don't have a show on Friday. So I just think it's a bit of a missed opportunity, if not a big missed opportunity. So what are your thoughts on this, folks? Will you watch or pay attention to the debate, whether it be the French debate tonight or the English debate tomorrow? And it should be mentioned, of course, the French debate was moved back. It was originally scheduled for 8 o'clock, and it's been moved back to 6 o'clock because the Montreal Canadiens have a big NHL home game and can clinch a playoff spot if they win. So I guess when it comes right down to it, we find out what priorities people have in this country. No criticism there. I think that probably a hockey game would be more exciting and more entertaining and more impactful than a debate anyway. But what are your thoughts on this? Also, on the federal election, are you decided or undecided? I would dare say most of you would likely have already made up your mind, but some of you are undecided. I'm going to be completely honest with you. Be frank with you. I'm still on the fence, and I'm not. I would never ask you who you're voting for. If you want to volunteer that information, then certainly do so. But I wouldn't directly ask you. But I will ask you: are you undecided or decided? And you can share based on that as much detail as you want. But I am still undecided as to where I'm going to park my vote. I have concerns and issues with all of the leaders, and I have things that I think that all of them bring to the table that I agree with. On Mark Carney, my concerns are, and I think that the potential there to drive a further deepening wedge between regions is there. It exists. I don't think that Mark Carney has the appetite for development of natural resources, in particular oil sands and natural gas. And I think that the time, if not now, then it will never happen. And my fear and concern is that if, in fact, he caps emissions and does not move forward stridently on pipelines and pipeline development and appeasing Alberta to a point, then you're going to have a very disgruntled region of the country, and I think justifiably so. So that is likely my main concern with Mark Carney. The upside to Mark Carney is that he does have a pedigree, which is impressive. And I know that some of you would discount it and say that he did a horrible job as the the governor of the Bank of England, and that depends where you get your information and and what you listen to. Others, Liz Truss would say that he did a horrible job, former Conservative Prime Minister. Others would say he did a great job. And the same could be said for here in Canada and the job that he did here in Canada. The concerns that people raise about his tax havens and shielding and not paying his fair share of taxes because of his ability to protect it due to the law of the land and tax havens, that to me is, look, I'm not saying that that's not an issue. I think that it's cuts deep to people who pay dearly through the nose with taxation, in particular income tax, and they see people like Mark Carney and rich elites not having to pay their share. I don't know that that's the biggest deal in the world when it comes to the electorate. I don't know how much that moves the needle. When it comes to Pierre Poilievre, look, I've got some. I think that he's got some upside for sure. I think that he brings some good ideas to the table. However, I do have concerns that he is a lifelong politician. I don't know how much acumen that he brings to the table when it comes to real life experience. I think that he has fallen under the trap of becoming a slogan type person. And I'm not sure how much depth he has, but look, he's got some good ideas, and I think he's got some upside as well. So I don't know where I'm going to park my vote. I do know that it won't be with the NDP. I will say that. Guaranteed, not a chance. So what's your take on this or anything else you've got in your mind? Again, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Let's kick it off with Jim. Hello, Jim.
How you doing, Todd?
I'm well, you?
Boy, that's a lot to cover.
Indeed.
Yeah. Actually, I'm not ashamed to say that I'm a big supporter, and you're not surprised at that, of Mark Carney. I can't wait to just vote to get this election over with, but I will be supporting him 100%. I'll be watching the French debate tonight. My wife is from Montreal. She's French-Canadian, so I don't need a translator, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that, I hope that what I'm looking for on the both debates is exactly where the Conservative Party, who I've spoken with a lot of conservative, even progressive conservatives that are going to vote Liberal, specifically because when they say that Poilievre represents the Conservative Party, it's quite obvious that based on all the data and interviews everybody's seen, that party is imploding within itself. And it's not the Conservative Party that a lot of regular conservatives know. It's a populist party, similar to one in the United States. So I think that's just my opinion.
What does that mean? Define what you mean by populist party, Jim.
Well, populist party is one that takes on like the Trump idea about their ideology about diminishing government departments. The CBC, for example, in Halifax is not Halifax. The CBC, Canada-wide, it's been around for years. He wants to diminish that. That's a big thing in Canada. I don't think he recognizes that. But they also wanted to stop giving to foreign aid and build up the so-called military and what have you. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things in that populist movement that I don't like.
Well, why do you, Jim? Let me interrupt you, if you don't mind. Why do you think that resonates with people? Because some people feel as though, look, the CBC has a lot of waste, a lot of bloat. They wouldn't release their numbers when it comes to who received bonuses, including even the CEO or the president of the CBC. So I don't know that it's fair to just simply say he's like Trump because he wants more accountability and fiscal responsibility.
I don't think that Poilievre is like Trump. I think he's a mirror image of Trump.
Well, that's pretty much how much more can you be like somebody?
A mirror image in the sense he's not trying to take over. Like he's not what's the word I'm looking for? Trump is an expansionist. He would like to take up all the world if he could for their minerals and what have you. He's an expansionist. Yeah. I don't see Poilievre as wanting to take over other countries. Just yesterday, Trump reiterated that he wants to still have Canada as the 51st state. But a populist party I remember when we had the truckers convoy.
Yeah.
And I'm a diabetic, and I remember that Polyev had no problem going up and putting his arms around those truckers that were blocking the Windsor entry into Canada with my medicine.
Yeah.
And other things. So that certainly people should be reminded of that.
Well, maybe people need to be reminded of the fact that the freezing of bank accounts was considered unconstitutional by the Supreme Court as well.
Well, you can't. You can play one off the other,
right?
But to close Canada down and say we're not strong, and when I'm going to affect people's actually life, my medicine and many other stuff that didn't come into this country, and Polyev's company embraced that. I don't forget that.
Yeah.
And so I think I think most people are decided.
Mm-hmm.
The debate in Quebec, I'm not worried about the Carney's French. It's quite good. It's not great. It's not right up there like 100%. But certainly, like my wife tells me, that it's very, it's understandable. There's no question about it. But you have the NDP and the Bloc that are going to do everything they can tonight to try to sway some Quebecers back to their form. Because after all, their votes are helping the Liberals. Let's face it.
Yeah.
But I want to make it quite clear to Chris and everybody else that I'll say Chris because he's a big conservative.
Yeah.
You're not a conservative, Chris. You're a populist, and it's not the Conservative Party. And that's why on April the 28th, mark this down, Todd. Yeah. On April the 28th, you are going to see a red map right across this country with a big major majority for Carney.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate the call, pal.
Okay. Take care.
All right, take care. I often hear that populist party, and I just sometimes I think these are buzzwords that people say, and I'm not sure that it's not meant to be complimentary. That's for sure. It's meant to be a derogatory, fear-mongering type comment. I think. I don't think that there's anything wrong with a government that perhaps wants to tighten the fiscal belt. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that we need more of that. Justin Trudeau's government, clearly things spiraled out of control. And you can say, well, it was because of the pandemic. Well, it was before the pandemic that was happening. But look, do I support what's happening in the United States and Doge? No, absolutely not. That's ridiculous. What Elon Musk is doing, that's horrifying. But I don't think it's a fair comment to say that because Pierre Poilievre wants to look at spending and wants to curtail spending and balance the budget, he's like Donald Trump or Elon Musk. To me, that's fear-mongering. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls. The way to reach us 902-405-6000. Robert, hello.
Hey, how you doing this morning?
I'm well, you?
Pretty good, too. Thanks for taking the call. A couple of times I've called with this topic, and then I'm driving, and I just didn't have time to be in the queue, so I had to hang up. But just a curious thought, if anyone has thought about the new highway, I don't know what the number is, it goes from Burnside to Bedford, that bypass, that must have made a huge difference in traffic flow morning and night. And I'm curious if anyone's thought about having before and after thoughts about what the Magazine Hill used to look like, or at Fall River, when people exit at Fall River at nighttime, that's crazy backed up, or it used to be. I'm wondering if anyone has thought about doing a before and after that. It's too late for the before, of course, but thoughts?
Well, I think it's a great piece of infrastructure. I've used it, and I think it's a great addition. I really do. I think it's fantastic.
I use it many times, and it's like, I can't believe it took, things take time, so that's okay. But I would really like to know if anyone did a car count, 6 or 8 months beforehand, and then maybe 2 or 3 months afterwards to see the difference it's made for commuters day by day.
Yeah, I think it would be a dramatic improvement. I think it's just a brilliant piece of infrastructure and long overdue.
All right, that's it.
Okay, thanks, pal. Take care. 902-405-6000. Fred, hello.
Good morning, Todd. How are you?
I'm well, you?
I just want to say congratulations. I never got that in last week on your nuptials there.
Thank you, sir.
Now you're going to have to learn everything's going to be yes, dear, and you're not ever going to be right again in your life.
Well, there was a good possibility.
Anyway.
There was a good possibility of that anyway.
Anyway, I'm a centrist. I've always said that, and I have made up my mind. And frankly, I am going with the economist, Mark Carney. And the reason is I like what he's done to date so far in his acting prime ministerial duties. I've also liked the fact that he's not over-promising things. Like he promised a 1% reduction in the HST. That's about $5 billion across Canada versus a $2.25 billion, or $2.75 billion, which is what Polyev is saying, which will cost us about $40 billion. I don't think we can afford that. I like his idea of reduction of the HST on first-time home buyers. I can understand that. I'm still trying to figure out the one for the PCs. That one was just right confusing. I don't know if the builders are getting the break or the buyers are getting the break. I'm just not sure on that aspect. I'm not going to be watching the debates, frankly. I think it's going to be, I'll watch the highlights, I guess you'd say, on the news. I am a proponent of CBC, but it does have to be cut down a bit or reduced somewhat. I think it's overbloated, and I think he will do that eventually. But we do need the CBC to go up against things like the National Post, the Sun, and all these other ones that are basically 66% owned by an American conglomerate. So that's where my.
So why do you think that Mark Carney will trim into the CBC? He's not indicated that. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite.
No, I think he's going to trim into it. There's no doubt in my mind. I just don't think he's going to say that right now because he's running.
Well, wouldn't it be refreshing if he would make commitments and say what he's going to say instead of being secretive?
Yeah, to some degree, but then you can turn that around to any other leader out there. They're secretive about their own stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if you look at the PC side of the house, okay, he's got way too much baggage over the last 6 years of the things and the bills that he's voted for, and Carney doesn't have that baggage, arguably. I don't care whether or not he made a company some money, which is what he's supposed to do, and it wasn't illegal. I mean, it just, to me, it's a no-brainer.
Well, you say, Fred, in fairness, you say that he's got no baggage, but some would say that, and again, I'm just being devil's advocate, and I'm not, and I mean this when I say I'm undecided, because I truly am. So I'm not wearing partisan goggles here. But some would say, and there's a legitimate argument, that Carney's fingerprints have been on the Liberal Party for the last 5+ years, because he has been a trusted advisor and was almost finance minister at least twice. So he does have his fingerprints on this party.
Almost nobody, and I have never ever seen anybody say that he advised Trudeau, and he may have advised him in the opposite direction that Trudeau went. Nobody knows what happened in those meetings, and you and I both know Trudeau was a person who, I'm going to do this, and this is what I'm going to do, and I think that's why he walked away a couple of times. He just said, no, this is not me.
Well, based on his book Values and based on what he said on the public record, I think that Trudeau's policies have mirrored in many ways what Carney has publicly talked about.
Well, maybe. Yeah. I personally don't think that. That's my opinion.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm happy with him. I'm not happy with the other two. Definitely not NDP. They've got to remake themselves.
Right.
So,
okay, Fred. Appreciate the call, pal.
Oh, one last thing.
Yeah.
The Green Party should be in that debate. I don't care who you are. They need a voice. Their party. Put them in the debate.
Well, they didn't meet the criteria though, Fred. There's criteria that's set out, and they didn't meet it. So
they're saying they did.
Well,
I don't know whose criteria is is right and whose is wrong. But if you were a Green person and you were voting for the Green Party, would you not want to hear from your leader?
Well, look, you have to. I can't remember what the exact criteria is, but I think it came down to the amount of candidates and that they had running in the country, and they didn't meet the threshold. That according to the. Anyway, we shall. Fred, I won't miss them. I'll tell you that. I personally, I won't miss hearing them or not hearing them. But that's my take. Thanks, Fred.
Yeah, all right.
Take care. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us again. 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. A quick email from Lee. Lee says Carney pledged $150 million more to the CBC. And that's true, he has. So, anyway, 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us again. 902-405-6000. What is your take on whatever's going on in the world? But a lot of you talking about the election, and I think rightfully so. And let's talk to Rob. Hello, Rob.
Hey, Todd. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
So on, Jim Hoskins, I mean, there's a guy that's always talking about crime, and he'd like to see gun violence and have something to resolve this situation, but the Liberals did nothing for that. They, whatever laws and restrictions and putting a ban on handguns, well, the criminals, do you think they actually woke up one day and said, uh-oh, we're in trouble? No, crime still flourishes because these people don't care. So anything Trudeau did to resolve the gun problem or the crime problem in Canada, they've done nothing. So why would we reward them with another? If that's something that's important to you, and it's important to me. But you know what, Todd? Some people, it does not matter. A Liberal does not need much of an excuse to go out there and, of course, vote Liberal. It wouldn't matter if Freeland had won in place of Carney, they'd be sitting here saying the same thing. Oh, we're going to go with her because of this, this, and this.
Yeah, Rob, let me interject and respectfully disagree on Freeland. I think Freeland would have been a complete disaster. That's just my take.
Sure. No, I think so. But I mean, you get my point, Todd. They're just so, God, Polyev, the sky would fall if we ever voted for a conservative, And this comparison that he's Trump-like because he wants to have a strong sovereign country. Well, part of that is having a capable military and being able to kind of stand up there and say, hey, look, we can meet our NATO commitment. Yeah. That's all part of being a strong sovereign country. Yeah. Like I said, it doesn't matter who would get the Liberal leadership. They would still be against Polyev.
Well, clearly on the Polyev thing and I classify it as fear mongering when it comes to likening him to Trump. It's flat out fear mongering is what it is.
Yeah, for sure. But no, Todd, I'm not voting for Justin 2.0. I'm just not doing it. He did give CBC, I think, another $150 million or something. Yeah,
he committed another $150 million to the CBC. Absolutely did. For sure. And
they've been campaigning for him, too. I mean, if I saw this back when Harper was running against Trudeau, that they have all these guests lined up all day. And if you add it all up, if you took everything every one of them said, at the end of the day, it was always favoring Trudeau. And now I see that it's sort of favoring Carney a little bit. I will say that. So if I don't think Carney's going to touch the CBC. I think they're quite happy to have him in there and keep wasting our money with bonuses and
for me, Rob, with the CBC, the thing that boils my rear end more than anything is those bonuses that go to the executives, and I think that the CBC and the journalists and the rank and file reporters and a lot of good work is done there, but clearly there's a lot of bloat and a lot of waste. And I don't think there's anything wrong with somebody going in there and giving it a fine-combed audit and maximizing. When all is said and done, Rob, don't we want to maximize our return on investment? Like that should be the benchmark for everything, shouldn't it?
You'd think. You'd think they'd run it like a strong, successful business and be accountable for everything.
Sure.
But no. I don't know. I just, like I said, I don't understand how we can be slapped in the face for 9 years and then we're going to continue.
Yeah.
We want to continue that. Like, how would you feel if you lived in a riding where Sean Fraser's running and there's a guy, whether it was under the direction of Trudeau, he put a lot of hurt on this country with his ridiculous immigration. They lost track of people. They lost control.
They did, and they even admitted it. So that's how bad that's got to get.
Yeah, no, that was funny when they came out and said, "Oh, we got it wrong."
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, the Sean Fraser thing, I would have a hard time voting for him just based on the fact that he wasn't running, and he said he's going to step away for family reasons. And then all of a sudden, when the political winds change, he has an epiphany, he wants to run again. I would have a hard time supporting him.
Yeah, but I would agree with Jim on one thing, that I believe this place, the Maritimes, you'll start to watch the results coming in, and it's going to all go red up around Ontario. I believe they'll probably get I hope not, but I mean, they might get a majority government. But anyways, that's just life goes on, and you do what you can do.
Okay,
right?
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it. Take care. 902-405-6000. Look, I will say this. I think Carney is an upgrade from Trudeau. I really believe that. I'm not, and again, I'm undecided, and I mean that when I say it. I'm not. That's not for theater. I'm truly undecided. I think Carney's a pretty big upgrade from Trudeau. But that all said, it's for the most part the same cast of characters of the last 10 years, and there's a lot of metrics out there that would prove and determine that the Liberals did a poor job. Now, again, you could say the fly in the ointment, of course, was the pandemic. And inflation has been a global issue, and so there's some truth to that. But you're supporting, basically, by supporting Carney, are you supporting the 10-year mandate in which the Liberals had a pretty poor performance on a lot of metrics? 902-405-6000, that is the way to reach us. Bradley, hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm well, you?
Good. Callers like your caller, Fred. Those are the people who scare me, who they're so hyped up on the Liberal. For every point that you said, he was like, I guess he's right. But he doesn't want to sit there and actually admit that Carney, like you said, over the last 5 years, he's been there. He's done Justin Trudeau's done everything that he said. Mark Carney has shown us this election that he has no backbone, that he's a liar, and will sit there and continue to do the same things for the next 4 years. And everybody's going to continually call him and say, why did we elect him? Why did we let him come in power? Considering that they're now saying, he's the best one for the job. But yet he's been lying. He's got no backbone. He had two people who put out 1,000 pins at a conservative rally, and we'll just move them to another file.
Well, in fairness, we don't know that Mark Carney gave any direction directly to do that. I would say that he didn't.
Where would you find if you had to find 1,000 pins right now?
Yeah.
Where would be your first? Would you even know where to go look for 1,000?
Yeah, look, Brad. Listen, I think that was absolutely disgusting what they did, and I think it was less than fair game. I just don't.
Same thing you can say with Paul Chang. He should have been thrown out the minute that he was.
That's true.
Made the statement about being.
That's true. That's true. They dropped the ball desperately on that. They did, absolutely. The Liberals did.
Dropped the ball desperately on their workers. They should have been fired straight away. So what's the next thing that's going to happen when we have another thing like Essa Lavalin or the Green Slush Fund? And then Mark Carney's going, no, we can't do anything. We don't have a backbone to be able to do anything.
Okay, Bradley, appreciate the call.
Every 4 years of the next thing. And we're going to be continuously calling in saying, what about this? What about this? And all the Liberal people are going to be like, well, they're not doing too bad. Well, at least it's not Justin Trudeau.
Right. Okay, thanks for the call. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, taking your calls, 902-405-6000. Tim, hello. Hi, Tim.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to talk about Young Drivers of Canada.
Okay.
And I'm an old man, and I just sit and look out my window. And at night, why do they have their high beams on? I mean, who's training them to put their high beams on?
What do you mean? Who to put
in
their...
Halifax. I mean, I sit and I look out my window, right?
Yeah.
I'm retired, and every fourth or fifth car goes by, they got their high beams on.
Well,
who's training them?
I can't answer that question, Tim. I don't know.
Okay, cool.
Okay, that it. Thanks. I don't know. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Let's hear what Bernie has to say. Hello, Bernie.
Good morning, Todd. Good morning. I was just saying we've got two fiscal conservatives vying for the attention of the Canadian public, and they're way ahead in the polls. I think that Carney could be just as head. If he was head of the Conservative Party, he wouldn't be out of place. I see where his dealings with Brookfield. I find out that 6 or 7 Tories had shares in the same company, so they're both in the same branch as far as I can see. Mm-hmm. As far as the NDP in this country, I think of the prairies, I think of Ontario, I think of Quebec, I think of Maritimes, and it's a damn shame they got them at 8% in the polls. I don't know what the Canadian electorate is thinking about.
Well, so, I mean, look, when it comes to Jagmeet Singh, clearly he's not resonated, right?
Well, I don't think he's not resonated. I think that in the States surfed all the news in the last couple of months that the Canada got scared, and they're going to Carney. But like I said, Carney could lead the Tory party. He wouldn't be out of place. They're two fiscal conservatives, and the people in this country better give the NDP a better showing so they hold account to whoever wins the government.
Okay, Bernie. Thanks for the call, pal. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Take care. 902-405-6000. Rob, hello.
Hey, good day, Todd. Thanks for taking my call, and congratulations on your nuptials. That's fantastic. Good news for you guys. All the best.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, this political debate here with the Liberals and PCs. My voting stance is I usually look at it from a business perspective all the time, and I just do not understand. After a 9-year contract has been up. That's how I look at this, basically. Is performance good or bad? From my perspective, it's just been bad performance. It doesn't matter who the party is. The contract is just them, the Liberals in this case. They're bad. So how do you reward poor performance? In my opinion, in the business world, we don't. We move on to the next, contract for the next 4 years and hope that we can make things work. And if it doesn't, you move on and cut bait. So I just do not understand, Todd, how anybody can look at this situation. Again, I'm not looking at it as Liberal or PCs. I'm just looking at it as who's there today doing the job, right? Yeah. And they're not doing the job. That's just my simple perspective, Todd.
Well, I guess the answer to that or the response would be that Mark Carney supposedly is going to change everything. You don't believe that?
No, no, Todd, you can't, right? I mean, come on. This is, again, let's use a sports analogy again, right? Same team, different head coach, right? Yeah. The Toronto Maple Leafs. Let's look at these guys, right? We're not talking about Craig Berube at all this year, right? As a good head coach in Toronto and taking them to the top, right? Mm-hmm. As opposed to the past coaches, right? Same team, different coach. Well, in this case, right? Carney is he's just as unproven as Poilievre is in my instance as well, right? I don't have a stake either way in these two guys. Mm-hmm. And again, a little bit of back thought to this too is that I think most of Canada we're all upset and disgraced with the way Trudeau was running things for a number of years. But that being said, there's been no stiff competition. Poilievre didn't do himself any good either. I was tired too listening to 2 years of his rhetoric of name calling and axe to tax and blah 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 instead of focusing on, like Gloria talks about, let's don't worry about talking about others. Talk about what you're going to do. That's what we need to hear, right? And we all want to understand, what are you going to do about situations? Never mind all this personal rhetoric and back and forth. all that's white noise to me, right? It's just, what is the business at hand here? And this party politics stuff, like I listen to Jim go one way. I think he's, completely wrong in his thinking, just as, I listen to the conservative people on the show too, right? And, that's their opinions, and that's fine. But what do you think? I mean,
well, some people would say that Poilievre is offered some meat on the bone when it comes to policy. He says he's going to fix the budget. He's going to stop the crime. He's going to balance. He's going to build the homes. And you don't buy any of that, or you don't support any of that.
No, again, I'm looking at it from a business perspective. When I listen to this, either politicians say whatever they're going to say, I just look at this as saying this is 9 years of a bad contract.
Yeah.
How do I reward the Liberal in this case?
Yeah.
A new contract. It's that black and white to me. So I'm stuck with two other options, right? If I look at it from a business perspective, and it's like, well, the NDP don't even get us started. Mm-hmm. They lost the whole opportunity, not replacing Jagmeet and reinventing their situation, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. But I'm down to now Poilievre. Well, is there a lot of things, I guess, that he says that make sense to me, when it comes to crime and all these other things going on in our country? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Do I give a crap about what's going on with down south and all this other business? Yeah, I do from my investment standpoint. Mm-hmm. But outside of that, I mean, it doesn't matter who represents us when we deal with that creamhead down south, right? So anyways, that's just my 2 cents.
Okay, all right, Rob, thanks for the call, pal. Appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you.
All right, 902-405-6000. Darren, hello.
Hi. Well, every time somebody talks, I got more to say. But earlier on, one guy said about Liberals will vote Liberal no matter what and won't even consider Conservatives. I have to disagree with that. I know a lot of people, like my parents' age, my aunts and uncles' age, who voted for Harper at least once or twice, and they will not vote for Poilievre because the Conservative Party is not the party it used to be. And people say PC. It's not PC anymore. They took out the Progressive from their name a long time ago, and people should just call them the Conservatives. And the other thing about fear-mongering, I don't think Poilievre is exactly like Trump, but he does a damn good job of trying to make himself sound exactly like Trump. So it's not fear-mongering. It's just looking at the language that only he, Musk, Pete Hegseth, Trump uses.
So give me some examples.
DEI, woke mind virus. There's all kinds of it. I've seen video mixes of him saying the exact same words that those other people say, and I don't hear any other politician saying them.
Yeah, but
it's as if a fascist phrase book has been circulated.
Well, listen. When you look at Trump recently, I don't think there's any comparison between Poilievre and Trump. I think Trump is an entity all into himself. I don't think anybody comes close to him.
He's using Trump's playbook.
What playbook is that?
The 3-word slogans, like you just said, the pitting people against each other, fear-mongering, just
and could there not be a good argument that the Liberals are doing the same thing in many ways?
I don't see Carney doing that.
No, you don't hear him fear-mongering. You haven't. That's exactly what he's doing. Is he not?
No, I don't think so.
No.
But the other thing about Carney, people say he's untested or is no better at, or no more experienced than Poilievre in dealing with this stuff. That's not true. He was the one that orchestrated the sell-off of the U.S. bonds a couple weeks ago, which spooked Trump and got him to backtrack on these tariffs. Yeah. He is the one who's going to lead all of the Western countries. So, and he got us through the 2008 crisis by cutting interest rates 6 months before any other country. So you have to look at the.
Okay, well, Darren, I guess what I'm saying is this is a good example of why I have concerns, because what you're talking about Carney and his pedigree and all that goes with it, and I think that stands on its own. But before that, you spent quite a bit of time railing and ripping and discrediting Poilievre. So you're doing the same thing, are you not?
No, I'm repeating what he has said himself. That's all I can go by. What Poilievre says, the language that he uses is exactly like Trump, Musk, Hegseth.
Well, the Liberals have have moved to the center. They have admitted that they've gone too far to the left. Have the Carneys
definitely
admitted?
have, yeah.
Well, so that speaks to his point. Does it not? That Poilievre said that the country's gone too far to the left, and apparently Carneys agreed.
Using that divisive language of woke mind virus, DEI, claiming that there's only two genders, just like Trump said, that is out of his playbook. I don't know how people can't see that.
Okay, Darren, appreciate the call, pal.
Okay.
All right,
thanks.
take care. Bill, hello.
Have we got time?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm trying to figure out how we have one person seems to be running the country, whether it's Trump or in Canada. I mean, we vote all other members of Parliament. Okay, do they have a say, or does somebody come up and say we want to have the carbon tax, and that's it? Or do they go back to the Parliament, all the members, and say, is this okay? I don't get this one person.
Yeah.
Government. What do you make of that?
Well, that's the immense power that under the parliamentary system that we have, that the leader has. In particular, if you've got a majority, and that basically you're the king. You're the king or the queen.
What's the point? What's the point of having a bunch of members of parliament?
That's a good question. That's a good question, Bill. That's a good question. Okay, pal. Thanks for the call, bud.
Congratulations.
Thanks, buddy. Take care. All right, take care. Thanks for the calls, everybody. We appreciate it very much. We'll open the phone lines again tomorrow between 11 and 12. I'd like to thank Vanessa Van Den Ness on the other side of the glass. The control board is doing a fine job, as always. We're back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. See you then.